I know I couldn't screenshot, but
There we go. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining.
Hi, everybody.
hey guys.
Hello.
How's everyone doing?
This
Hi.
one's a little better for the Australians.
Yes.
wow.
Yeah, we're a little bit later.
They're just waking up very early instead of very late.
It's the late night session.
Yeah, it is for us. Oh. Good. Well, welcome, everyone. This is Gary Dollner,
Hello.
editor extraordinaire, responsible for Fleabag, amongst many, many others. And so we thought we'd have another Q&A session, chat a bit more about Fleabag. I'm sure you're all waiting to get stuck in. So I know Chrissy and Ali have got all the questions. So whenever you guys want to fire away, feel free.
Sure. And what we'll do is unless you've asked us otherwise, we'll toss to you to ask your question, and then you can unmute and ask.
Great.
All right, let's just jump in.
Do it.
Joy Tipping has a question about the dinner episode, about episode 1 of season 2.
Okay.
Where's Joy?
Where's Joy? Is she here yet?
Did she get in here yet? Okay, then we'll skip her question.
Come
We'll
back to that.
her.
Come back to that.
I always feel like a radio DJ. Are you on the line? Turn on your radio, please. Is Laura Halliday on the line? Hello? Is anybody
Hello.
here? Is Lori on the line? Who?
There we
Where's
go.
Lori?
There she is, yeah.
Who's this?
Lori.
Lori?
Yeah.
Okay.
My question was, I have to stop and think. Sorry. No, I was going to ask you if you've ever had a production that you worked on that was really challenging. Like, what was your most challenging production or job, and what made that challenging?
Good question. I think every job in its way has its own challenges. You know, you come on board a project as an editor quite late on in the process, so you know, scripts have been worked on and honed, rehearsals have happened, and ordinarily I will start the first day of the shoot. So I'll have a day to set up my kit, and then the first day's shoot I start cutting on the second day. So you have to, I mean, obviously you get to read scripts, but you have to hit the ground running quite quickly, whereas everyone else on the production's, you know, pored over these scripts for often months and months and months. So you've got to be quite sort of nimble in terms of, you know, trying to get up to speed. And I think every project is, you know, it's like a big jigsaw puzzle, and you have to be reactive to material because you've got a sense of you know, the story and the beats and the characters from reading the script, but it's until you actually watch the rushes, and you're in a very, you know, privileged position because you're the first person that ever you're the first member of the audience ever to watch the material. And so I think it's important to, you know, in some ways to keep yourself quite fresh so that you're reacting to material only, and you're not getting waylaid by whoever the actor is or whatever you think the story should be. I like to try and keep you know, a fresh eye so that when I watch the material I'll get an idea about which way it should go, you know. So I think, you know, in some ways every I mean, that's the thing that's, you know, really interesting about this job, is that each project presents its own set of hurdles that you've got to try and jump over. I mean, some maybe are more difficult than others, but yeah, I mean, you know, that's the thing that I think there's not one that really stands out as being, you know, really tricky to have navigated in that way.
You mentioned when we talked to you that when you edited Killing Eve, that was a little bit of a switch because that was more dramatic. So how did you kind of adjust your technique?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, on the plus side, you know, I was working with Harry and Phoebe, and so, you know, we were already, you know, had formed
Got a
quite a tight
shorthand.
unit, yeah, on Fleabag. So, but then there was lots of other sort of factors going on. You know, it was a brand new show. It was an American commissioned show. I think they had quite high expectations. So you felt like the expectation level was quite high. And I think the thing with when you do work on a new show, you're trying to establish the tone so much, especially with the first episode, because so much hinges on you know, basically once you've watched the first ep, you're going to know whether the audience are going to come back or not, and if they don't come back, then you've blown it, you know. And I think the thing that I liked about the script that Phoebe had written for Killing Eve was that, you know, there was just quite gory stuff going on, but underneath it all there was like this sort of dark humour underlying it all. So it was about trying to tease all that out whilst at the same time, you know, making it like a thriller as well. So that was an interesting balance to try and, you know, like a tightrope, trying to walk that line. So I think, you know, in some ways, you know, with a straight comedy, you're going for the laughs all the time, you know, and sometimes one of the things I loved about Fleabag was that although it was essentially a comedy, you know, the thing that really I got drawn in by was the drama of what was going on. So with Fleabag, I was trying to sort of up the drama whilst obviously, you know, playing for comedy all the time, whereas in Killing Eve, it was, you know, slightly flipped. So you're trying to tease out the comedy whilst, you know, the first task is to get the story working and, you know, keeping the drama driving forward and establishing the characters. But once you try and do all that, I mean, it's like a juggling act, you know, you're chucking these balls up in the air all the time, but you know, I think because I've come from a comedy background, I'm always sort of, you know, trying to shine a light on if there's a little smirk or a moment that we can just rinse, if you like.
We actually worked together, didn't we, on a really early comedy, didn't we?
Yes, we did. Yeah.
First time we worked together was on a show called Brass Eye.
Yeah, that was over 20 years ago now, probably.
Yeah.
But one of the best comedies I've ever worked on. I mean,
I would agree with that. Me too. Yeah, I mean, it was a fantastic job for a designer to do. Really inventive and creative and crazy.
Yeah, we're very lucky to work with some brilliant people.
Yeah, very.
One thing, when you were saying how that, you know, you study the scripts, or other people have had more time with the scripts, but Jonathan has talked about how so much changed with the script as the show is being shot. So it seems like that might affect you the least because you're getting just the footage and then going from there.
Yeah, and like, you know, it's funny, I think I've been very lucky, like I just mentioned. I've worked with some brilliant comedians and some brilliant writers, and one of the things that is almost a constant theme is that they all love to rewrite at the last minute. So it doesn't affect me at all. I mean, I love improv. I even, you know, I worked on shows. I mean, you know, in particular, the two shows that spring to mind are The Thick of It and Veep, where, you know, it was almost like an incarnation of The Thick of It, where, you know, they'd be rewriting on alternative jokes on, you know, on the day, and be chucking these, you know, can we go again, but I want you to try this punchline instead of that punchline, you know. And that's great because it's, you know, from an editor's point of view, it means that you've got all this sort of, you know, either works or it doesn't, but if you've got a fresh improvised line, it can really lift a scene, you know. Whereas from other people's point of view, you know, performers, directors, producers, you know, it can be designers, it can be a nightmare when they come up with these really late ideas, you know. But that's not really my problem. As long as it makes the show better, that's all I care about.
Exactly. I think, and with regard to Fleabag, we've kind of always said that everyone would kind of really go the extra mile for Phoebe and her script changes, and you know, kind of, it's really, although it gives you problems and issues, it's really not a problem because you know that ultimately it's for the good of the show and it's making it better. So
and that's the only thing that you can, be governed by, and and the fact that she's so nice, and you do.
I know. No.
We always need to set aside like 8 minutes of these for you guys
Yeah.
to TV.
Which is
Oh,
fine. We're here for that. Keep
Yeah.
talking.
one
A
day
couple
we'll get
people
to
that-
join the Zoom call. One day.
A couple people in the comments are saying Brass Eye was one of their favorites.
Oh,
It's
yeah. It's
one of my
it's really-
favourites too.
yeah, it was a pretty special show, really. Yeah.
What
I
was it?
still-
For Americans was it?
Still got like loads of lines that just get lodged in my head, and every now and
Yeah.
then one comes
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, for those that didn't see it or don't know about it, it was kind of a spoof kind of news documentary show, but it was done in a way that you could believe it was real. So it didn't, the aim was that didn't look like a comedy show. It looked like a really serious, proper news documentary. But some of the subject matter was quite outlandish.
So it did.
If you ever get the chance to see
all
it.
sorts of ground,
Yeah.
groundbreaking. But,
It was pretty
the other thing,
groundbreaking.
the thing that's one of the things that I find so funny about its legacy is that it skewed British news forever.
Yeah.
Because it had these really sophisticated but really silly graphics.
Yeah.
And the music
I remember that.
to go
Yeah.
along with the theme tune was like really out there, and this is if you like sort of Fox News, it's very much like that now, but this is 20 years ago. In
Yes.
Britain, had never been anything like that. And then slowly, British news started to ape what we were doing on it, which was hilarious.
Yeah.
Well, we have a question. Wanted to see if Joy's here, but I've been scanning and I don't
I don't think she's here.
here yet. And same with Geraldine. Are you here yet, Geraldine? Do not see you. So let's skip to Sarah. Amy, you had a question for Gary. Go ahead.
Hello.
Hey,
Hey, thanks for doing this.
Roger.
My question was there a character in Fleabag that you really enjoyed doing edits for the character? Maybe because the actor gave you a lot of different options to work from, or I'm not sure, but yeah, I was just curious about that.
It was such a fantastic cast that, I couldn't get enough of all of them, really. They were all so, I think it was a real testament to Phoebe and her writing that she managed, because it was a relatively small show when we first started, and to have got the cast together that she did do, that's just a testament to her and her writing, really. But no, they're all amazing in their own way, I think.
We know
Yeah.
Godmother got some really funny edits. I know you've mentioned that before.
She is unbelievable. She is. I love her to bits. And funny enough, I did a show a few years ago, it was quite a while ago, called Rev, and she played the wife in that. And I remember going to a rap party, and sorry, that's the dog. And as the editor, you're stuck. They just all finished on set, and everyone's got this great camaraderie, and everyone's all mates. And then I was like this little sort of wallflower in the corner, just sort of sipping my drink because I didn't really know anyone. And she just grabbed me and took me onto the dance floor, and we had a little dance. She was brilliant. She was lovely. What can even, the thing that I'm just thinking now about the things that, one of the lines that made me laugh, properly howl out, and she was brilliant direction, because it was the scene where Fleabag turns up and she's hungover and she's hiding behind the flowers, and then they're in Godmother's and her father's room, and he says he can't, priest says he can't do the ceremony, and she's
That's my favourite scene with
just
Olivia.
know. And she was so brilliant, and it was nuanced to a T, because you could feel the internal rage written right across her face, and she kept it down, and she kept it down, and she kept it down, and everyone's like, you know, to the point where we go around the room at one point and say, what's going on? This is not quite right. And then the explosion, but it was done in the background, you know, and you couldn't see her properly. She's genius.
Yeah, that's great.
But I remember I think it was in the first series where I'll never forget this one. They were having an argument. So Godmother and Fleabag were having an argument in the hallway, and it's the moment where Godmother has to hit Fleabag, and I think Phoebe said to her, "I'll take 4. I've gone really hit me this time." And so the take goes, and she goes, and she really, really wallows her. And Phoebe was just amazing, and you could see the red hand mark.
Yeah, you can see a mark. Yeah,
you know, makeup you can never you could, but there was something just so real about it. I just thought that was, I mean, it wasn't funny, but it was a great moment.
Is that the take you used? Because I feel like I went back and yeah. Because it even keeps getting redder, like as the scene continues.
Yeah, I know. Well, she really whacked her. That's why. Yeah, no. I mean, it was just yeah. I mean, they're all a joy to cut, really.
We're getting popular demand to see your dog, Gary.
Oh, really? Hang on.
If it's convenient.
Oh,
Oh my God.
I ask.
oh, so cute.
Hello.
The sweet pup.
Thank you.
Now we can move on.
Came into the edit a few times.
Has he? Oh.
In fact, Harry got a bit upset one day because I brought him in. I think I had to bring him in because I couldn't get cover for him. And he's got a lovely dog called Socks. And he's a grumpy so-and-so. I mean, my dog, not Harry. And like Phoebe was like sort of having a play. And eventually they became vaguely friendly because he's not very nice with people. And then, like, within about 3 days, Socks was in the edit as well. Like, if Harry's bringing his dog in, then I'm bringing Socks in.
That's great.
Funny. Let me see. Maria Gillen? Anybody?
Bueller?
Yeah. Everybody submitted questions and it was like, peace out. What about Sophronia? Am I saying that correctly? Is she here to correct me? Well, we're just going to start asking these questions, whether they're here or not.
They'll watch the recording.
Yeah. So Joy's question had been, and this is her exact phrasing, how much footage in hours did you have to whittle down to make that perfect dinner episode?
Oh, there must have been loads. We shot for days.
Quite a bit. I mean, you know, I think with that first episode, because it was contained, sort of set-wise, obviously they could shoot a lot more, and they had to because there's something about scenes that involve multi-characters, especially if it's in one location. You need to cover it from every which way. So and there's angles over each other's shoulders, and obviously the more you've got around the table, the more it increases substantially, you know, the more angles you've got to cover. So I can't remember in terms of hours, but, you know, there was a lot. And the other thing about that episode is that there would often be 8-9 minute takes, which is really unusual in any show, you know, or in any scene. They never run for that long. You know, really, I suppose the most you maybe get a 5 or 6 minute scene, but you would rarely get, you know, a scene that would run 8 or 9 minutes. And I think they wanted to sort of get in the flow and just run with it because it was all round the table, even though that 8 or 9 minutes might have been split up in terms of scenes. It was quite theatrical, I think, in a way, because they, you know, it's almost like there's the stage and they can just perform, you know, and they had to keep obviously doing it again and again and again to get all the coverage. But sorry, I can't remember how much there was, but there was a
Many
bucket
hours.
load.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is brilliant. I mean, it's by far the best way to be. It just means you got to, you know, rinse that material and go over and over and over again. You know, it just takes quite a long time to sort of fill it out, all the best bits, really.
So how do you do that? You take you just kind of watch all the rough footage first and then start to cherry pick?
Yeah, I mean, I've changed my method a few years ago. I can't remember on that scene whether I probably broke it down into chunks because it was so long. But I would, as I'm watching a scene, if I thought there was a really good performance of a line, I would just stop and pop it into what's called a select sequence and carry on watching it. And every time I saw something from that take that I liked, it would just go into the select sequence. And then, you know, you get a sense of when you're watching, whatever the angle is, if it's a great big wide, you know that, you know, experience tells you that you're only ever going to go to that shot a few times. Whereas, you know, if you've got a shot that's like that and they're delivering a line and it's the right angle to someone else they're delivering the line to, you're going to use that take quite a lot. So then you start, and in the end, say if you've got a 5-minute scene, you may end up with a select reel that's 35 minutes long. But in that 35 minutes, you've got what I think is nearly every best bit there is. So then I copy that and then start squeezing it down and then selecting takes and then building it around and getting a rhythm and just honing it down from there, really.
And then you just have all that in your memory, like if later there was a shot you took out and you go, oh, wait a minute, this...
Yeah, it's funny because my kids go mad because, you know, I can't remember what I did 5 minutes ago, but with yeah, I don't know, maybe it's a part of your brain that you just developed and as a result, the other part of the brain doesn't work very well because all your, you know, cognitive powers going onto that bit. But yeah, I've got quite a good, I think when you watch stuff and you know that, oh, I really like the way that she did that look, or, you know, there was a head turn and then a brilliant version of that line, and you think, well, okay, I'll use that. And you tend to, and in that 35 minutes, say, of selects for a scene, you know that for that line, there's one version that you really liked, and then when you watch it again, there might be 4 on the bounce or 5 on the bounce for that, even that one line. Then you go, okay, that's the one that I really remembered being great. And then you watch it again and again, and you go, okay, yeah, I was right. And then you get rid of the other ones and use that one.
It's interesting hearing you talk about cutting to a single when people are delivering a line, which is absolutely obvious. But from a designer's point of view, you design for a wide shot because there's not much you can put into a single frame of somebody's face.
No,
so
it's interesting, but if it's covered in the right way, you know, there's something really sweet, and I like even if it's on singles or mid shots, you know, when I like dirty frames so that you got, you know, if you're looking at you but it's over someone's shoulder, and then if it's done in a certain way with certain lenses, you can always get, you know, detailing behind their shoulder, you know. And again, if it's lit well, you know, there's lots of things that you know, a good DOP will incorporate, and Tony did such a good job in covering it that you get, you know, you try and even in that, because, you know, ultimately when it's dialogue, this is what's interesting. You want to see what's going on in people's eyes and on their, you know, their mouth, and you know,
you don't want to see the set.
The way you're reading their face as well as hearing the words that they're saying, you know.
Lots of time to see the set when you watched it 20 times, Jonathan.
Yeah, true.
We're seeing it.
What establishes a 4?
Sorry, what?
That's what establishes a 4.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Even though I was just going to say on the Production Design Guild chat with Phoebe and Joanna and Rebecca. Was it Rebecca? Was that her name?
Lucy.
You know, same. That actually Fleabag didn't have a lot of those kind of establishing shots, like panning off of a prop or even like an exterior. Like you just went right into the action. Which I guess is that from you, Gary, or is that a Harry Bradbury decision?
Well, I think it's Yeah, I think it was obviously a directorial, a Harry call, really. But you're in a restaurant, so what are you going to have? An outside shot of the restaurant? I mean, it felt. I think the way Harry covered it was very theatrical, and I know he deliberately didn't move the camera much, and so, which was great from my point of view because it meant that, the editing rhythm or the rhythm and the pace of the dialogue I could create rather than being dictated by like a nice tracking shot around someone's shoulder before the line, whereas that's fine if that's the style of the piece, but it means that you have to incorporate camera moves in your rhythm, whereas if things are shot quite straight, then I can use whatever I want. I haven't got to wait for that tracking shot to come around before I cut.
I think what I've always found fascinating about editing is that you can really change the story so dramatically from how it was shot. So it's kind of like the directing and cinematography part is kind of one pass, and the editing is almost another, and it can be a completely different product from one stage to the next.
Yeah, that's one of the things why I think I've stayed in editing so long is that you get to sort of not write, but you do get to sort of you give like a rewrite pass in a way because like you say you can manipulate things so much. I mean, one of the things that was so fantastic about season 2 was working with Izzo, the composer, and when they went away and came up with this this theme, it was like, oh wow! That not only was it so amazing, but it seemed to fit so perfectly with the decision to cast a priest, which I felt like elevated the whole thing. It wasn't just about Fleabag and her sexual exploits. It did elevate the whole thing, and then all these themes and of religion came into it, and then of course when that music came in, I mean, I think because I remember cutting a dining room scene, a dinner scene in a show I did with Armando years ago, and I remember then like really enjoying the sort of the energy of I mean, someone mentioned about challenges, and it was a great challenge because you've got a static situation where people are sat round a table and there's no action there at all, so it's completely contingent on how you cut it. All the energy and rhythm is going to be generated by you. You're not going to get it, you'll get obviously elements out of the performance, but you haven't got any fast moving action to help you be dynamic, and that's great. And I think this is the same with the opening episode of season 2. Some ways it forces your hand because you have to generate all of that. But when Izzo did bring the music, it then sort of elevated it again because I felt like we almost come out of the reality of dialogue and open it right out if we needed to. There was one moment. In fact, I think I did. Someone got a question about. Oh, go on.
Pretend it's in your select bin. It will come back to you.
It was a question about taking out all the looks to camera. Yeah. Preempting that, what we did do, but one of the consequences of that 3 days of taking all the looks out was we found a whole bunch of laughs, real raucous laughs, and it was only when Izzo brought the music in that I thought we could use that music and these laughs to sort of almost illustrate a time passing passage. Yeah. And we tried it, and it was like it felt really epic and very dramatic and quite cinematic, but it was an accident, really.
Yeah, I remember thinking that.
They're the happy accidents that happen when you're cutting.
Of course, yeah. I remember still to this day. I remember being so blown away by seeing the first episode at the screening, because that was the first time I'd seen it cut together with the music added. and it was just phenomenal because you just see it as, you know, a day's filming of people sitting around a table talking, and to suddenly see it all cut together with the soundtrack and the music was just, you know, it did make it epic. Really did. It was an epic episode.
I mean, I've always wondered how people who spend so long on a project and then they leave it when the filming's finished. And I feel really sorry for them because they've got no idea how it's going to turn out.
No, first time you might see it is on TV with everyone else.
And it's just weird how you got to let go of that without knowing and letting go and not having any control over how it all turns out.
Yeah.
What I love with that laughing sequence, because we said before when we talked to you, like it's almost borders on like maniacal.
Yeah.
It's kind of also like the insincerity of it, but then it also feels like she's walking into, like you walk into a room and everybody's laughing at a joke that you didn't hear.
Yes, there's always that moment, isn't there? Especially in that kind of situation when, you know, you're down one end of the table and someone else is down the other, and you always feel like, well, I do anyway. Oh, that conversation feels much more interesting than what's going on down this end.
Yeah, especially knowing she hasn't seen seen any of them for a year, you know. Go ahead, Allie.
Well, yeah, so Pilly actually had asked a question in the chat. Do you want to say that, or would you like us to say it for you? I don't know.
Oscar.
Well, I will go ahead. Oh, there you are, Pilly. Go ahead. We can't really hear you.
Do you hear me?
Oh, there
Now
you
I
go.
can.
Yes, it was the headphones. Hello, Gary.
Hi.
Hey.
How much creative input did you have in the process? Do you recall a moment in the final cut of the show that changed from the original script because of your contribution?
Yeah, I mean, I'm lucky enough to have quite a big say in you know, in the process. I mean, I think part of that was, especially with season 2, you know, I'd never worked with Harry before we did Fleabag, and never worked with Phoebe, and so we sort of got to know each other during the edit, you know, and yeah, that's how and we were lucky enough to just all really get on. I think the fact that we all were so in love with this show and this character helped hugely. But I'm trying to think of yeah, there was there was a one moment where I can't remember which episode it was. We watched a scene back, and I think what we've done is in our, you know, we're constantly honing a scene, and something was missing, and we couldn't quite put our finger on it. And Phoebe went, "I'll just play the assembly version," which is the assembly version is my original edit of a scene. So we played the assembly version, and I knew it was better than what we'd ended up with, right? And but that was just because you go down, you know, avenues to try things out, you know. And I was a bit cocky, to be honest. I just swiveled around on my chair and just had a big smile on my face, and she went, all right, put it back, you know. But it's so nice because it's not like it's not a competitive thing. It's so nice that you know someone well enough that there's, you know, great banter going on, and you can afford to do all that sort of stuff, and it's all about, you know, what makes that scene the best possible scene, you know. But yeah, no, it's Harry in particular is, you know, I think one of the most generous directors I've ever worked with. He's got such a hands-off approach, and he's lovely because he lets me just crack on with whatever I want to do, and often I'm the one that, you know, gets a bit passionate about things, and, you know, he's calmness personified, you know, and so he'll just gently probe towards the end of a scene, and, you know, 9 times out of 10 he's completely right. So then I, you know, And it's just, you find out, it's like anything, I suppose, you find a working relationship with people that you like and respect,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Speaking of being passionate about something, Ellen, I'm just going to be transparent, Ellen. Ellen messaged me, was like, I have a question. Do you think it's okay to ask about the sex scenes? I was like, go for it. You ask it, Ellen. She's like, no, you ask it. So, Ellen,
Yeah.
and only Ellen, none of us are interested in this answer. Just
Oh,
Ellen. Just that, so, there's basically like, 3 kissing / sex scenes, and that they're great. And that, the brevity contributes to the hotness, is what Ellen said. And just wondering, like, how much footage did you have to work with? And you obviously got to watch those scenes many, many, many times.
Well, it's a tough job. Someone's got to do it.
Maybe more than we have. We actually have a joke, #1 thrust. Why did we only get 1, Gary?
You get one.
1 thrust.
Yeah, but it was a good one though, right?
It's great. I mean, we got the job done. But no, what were the discussions about those scenes and how much to show, how much to withhold,
Well, I think,
primus of?
I mean, a lot of it was like Harry and I would do a cut before Phoebe came in, and then the 3 of us would, go through stuff together, once Harry was happy with it. And, a big part of that conversation was about, I suppose, protecting Phoebe as a performer. And, because I know so much of, on both series, so much of it is about sex, but it's not about, gratuitously showing it. And, my mantra with a lot of editing, and especially with comedy, is less is more, and I think if you can, the truth is, if you can tell any story quicker and still get all the right beats, then why use 58 words when 3 will do, and it's that principle of being, that's actually what's called editing. You're honing down people's performance so that you make them deliver what they need to say in the best possible way. And often that means, snipping out lines, and maybe sometimes it involves, opening out, ponderous looks. And it's about playing around with all of those rhythms and finding one that you think works best for that particular moment. I think let's take the one where,
Let's
the cut.
down in detail, Gary.
That you want fine detail, don't you?
I mean, the reality is those scenes when they're filming them are, it's not how they end up when they're cut. It's a very kind of mechanical kind of, yeah. I mean, it's a very different vibe when it's being shot. So to make it feel as real as it does is very skillful from your part.
I think it helped that Andrew and Phoebe had, I mean, they were good mates anyway before the shoot, but they had something on camera that,
yeah,
that was palpable, really. And, that's, I mean, it was funny. We did have a laugh, doing those scenes and cutting them. And, I think it's that thing where you want to be, without being prudish, you actually want to be quite delicate with it, because it's,
of course, yeah. It's a sensitive subject.
I think so, yeah. And especially with that storyline, because that, it's quite easy to forget that this is, a relatively radical story that you're trying to pitch, in the right way, because you want, I think it's like a lot of, those encounters, so much happens in the anticipation, and so the more you can build that up, the more that I think you can manipulate the audience. So, I mean, I know I mentioned it before, but I mean, rhythmically in the first episode, once I saw the rushes of the punch, I knew that was a key point in that episode. I think it came in about 18 or 19 minutes. So I knew that I basically had the first 18 minutes to build up to that point. And the more I coiled the spring, the more I wound the whole thing up, the stronger that would land. You just want to get to the stage where, oh, go on, hit him with you, and if you were feeling that as the audience, then when she does land the punch, she's going to feel that much more, satisfying. And I think that, the same could be said about their relationship, their dance, if you like. And, even in that, and of course it's completely undercut comically when, what's his name turns up and she tries to get rid of him, which you can use to, you sort of, it's sort of putting a pin in the tension of the air and the tension between the two of them, but it's done for comic effect, and I think it's all, editing is all about manipulation, so if you can either stretch time or condense time, you try and use all these tricks to tell the story and see which lands the best. I know there's not much salacious gossip in any
Well, a couple of people in the chat are asking about, like, I think especially since like Me Too and all that, like about an intimacy coordinator on the set, or because I guess I haven't watched.
That's quite a new thing actually. So, and you've got to remember, Fleabag we shot that in 2018, and I don't, as far as I'm aware, I don't think that role even existed back then. I think if we were to shoot it now, we possibly would have one. It would really be down to Phoebe, I guess.
It would have to be protecting Andrew, not Phoebe.
Yes, yeah.
What was that?
By the way.
Wait, what did you say?
It doesn't matter. It wasn't that funny.
We can edit that out.
Yeah.
There you go.
No, I was to say and the point you were making about it, that it wasn't gratuitous, because Phoebe has even said that people say like, oh, there's so much nudity in Fleabag, and she's like, there's actually zero.
Yeah.
Which people, I think the fact too that she's like talking to us during a lot of those sex scenes makes them feel more intimate than they are, or more graphic than they are.
Mm.
Although, I don't know, the first episode, some people are like, you didn't tell me not to watch this with my mother. All right, what do we have next? Let's see. Is Janice on the line? I'm still talking like I'm the 1980s radio DJ.
Someone's on dial-up.
I think I saw. Yeah.
Look up AOL keyword Fleabag. Is Janice there? There you are.
Janice, yeah.
Did I say it right?
It's Janice.
Janice, thank you.
I had a question for Gary that's not at all technical or anything, but I was just curious if there's like an outtake tape of the show, like bloopers or gag reel or that kind of thing, because I think that we would all be very interested in watching that. And then I had a question for Jonathan about how do you see the pandemic influencing your job in the future? Like, how is that going to affect the industry? As for scouting locations and materials, props, like what kind of impact do you think that's going to have with just sourcing things and reusing things as well? Because I'm really excited for you to do Atlanta, and I hope that happens soon, but I'm just curious. Yeah. So, thank you.
Shall I go first, or do you want to talk, Gary?
Well, you go first. I've been talking a lot.
So I think the pandemic is going to affect the industry quite a lot, really, particularly for location filming. Scouting, by its very nature, means that at least one or two people have to go into somebody else's property. And at the moment, that's obviously quite tricky. So particularly private houses, because, are they going to want a crew of 60 people filming in their house for days on end. So that's going to be a challenge. I think more public places would be easier, you know, like a restaurant, for example, because you would take the whole place over. I'm not sure how that's going to work. I mean, normally when I go out scouting with the location manager, it's the two of us in a car together. So even that is going to be a challenge. You know, we'll probably have to travel separately and, you know, stay socially distant from each other. How long that goes on for, I don't know, because I think, you know, by the time productions get up to filming, it's probably going to be in the autumn now. So things might well have, you know, might have changed for the better, let's hope. But yeah, certainly going to be challenging. And just going to prop houses and hiring stuff, you know, they're kind of talking about people having to kind of pre-order props and furniture and dressing and then just send a van to go pick it up. And so, you know, the days of wandering around a warehouse picking things out is, you know, they might be gone for a few months. So there's all sorts of challenges that I don't think the industry has quite got to grips with yet, because it's all so new. So all of that remains to be seen. But I think, you know, we can kind of pretty much guarantee that somehow or other we'll get it done and get through it, because that's, you know, we kind of, our business is built on problem solving and making things happen. It's just going to be a question of figuring out the best way to do it. So yeah, I think there's a lot of challenges ahead, not just for our industry, for all sorts of industries. But as far as filming goes, I think location scouting and filming will probably be the hardest part, because shooting in a studio on a set will be a lot more controllable.
Thank you.
And with regard, yeah, there was some sort of tape. I tend to get my assistants as we're cutting scenes as we start filming. I mean, they do it anyway, but I just make sure, oh, you're doing a funnies reel, and what they do is they open up a bin, and every time they see something, they just pop it in, and I'll check in if I've seen some. If I'm cutting a scene and I've seen something that's an outtake or something funny, I just say, oh, did you see that? And yeah, it's already in there. And then I let them, you know, because it's good to encourage the assistants to edit, because they have loads of other things to do as well in order to help me cut the show or the film. So I like to sort of say, well, you know, when you're done with all your jobs, try, you know, either cutting a scene, or I always give them the sort of party tapes to do. But yeah, I don't think there were that many outtakes, but you won't get to see it because it was just shown on the wrap party and that's it. So sorry.
Thank you.
Were there any particular scenes that were having a hard time getting through?
No, there weren't that many. I don't recall, you know, any scenes that come to mind that where, you know, there was no sort of out. You know, sometimes certain actors get the giggles and they can't get over it. You know, the same point. And then of course it's not the thing that made them laugh, it's the fact they've been laughing, and then they go over and over again on the same point. But no, it wasn't too bad for that, really. They're all so professional.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, Sarah, Amy, you had a question. You want to go ahead and ask another one?
Hello again.
Hello.
So my other question for Gary was, I think most of us are probably habitual rewatchers at this point and have watched like many, many, many times. And so I was curious, even though the show is beautifully edited, I was curious if anything got left in either on purpose or by accident that would be fun for us to look for when we rewatch, like any little Easter eggs or anything. I think we know the bus sign. We love the story of the bus sign with your name on it. That's a great one. But yeah, anything else?
I think I saw something on your podcast, on your Twitter feed a few months ago. Someone had pointed out Martin eating the bean in the first episode.
Yes.
That was just, you know, that's a good example of, because that's the first thing that actors, when they're notorious, they don't like, you know, if they've got to do that scene, they might have to do a scene, you know, 15, 20 times. And if you have to eat, you know, you don't want to be eating chips or fries or, you know, cake. Well, some actors might do, but, you know, that many times. So, like, you know, they're always, you notice that they do lots of cutting action, but they rarely do, you know, put it, and certainly don't eat it. And I know quite a few of them have a spit bucket as well. So you probably know more about that on set than I do. They're eating away and then wallop, you know, at the end of the scene. But that was something that was deliberately put in, because I remember watching it and going, this is Brett down to a T. He's so brilliant. I love him. And he does things that rarely you see in actors, and I think it's his whole comic background. But he did a thing where he was eating, and of course he dropped the bean, and instead of, like, most actors would just, you know, oh, forget it, hopefully no one saw it, and I don't do anything about it, no one's going to say anything. But him being him, brilliantly just did a perfect reaction to it, where he looked down, like, you know, as if to say, what's going on with that bean, you know. And there are so few people who would actually make a thing out of the time, and 9 times out of 10 you cut it out because it's deemed a mistake, you know. But actually, they're the sort of little moments when you're combing through material. They're the little moments that you want to look for, because, you know, it's completely natural. You'll never do it again. And I think that's that thing where, I think, as I've worked in, you know, a lot of comedy shows where it's sort of not improvised, but semi-improvised, where they try and do a bit of riffing on their own, you know. 9 times out of 10, it's never as good as the written version. Every now and again, you'll just get a real natural reaction, and it might be from the person opposite. So an actor will do a line, and because that line is new, because they think they're being funny, or they're trying a line or a version of a line out, you might surprise the person opposite, and then they react, and that just one of their reactions might be great. So it's just the tiny little nuance things, really. But I mean, that's what makes it, you know, such a fascinating process, I think.
Do you dread when you see an eating scene like that? Because I feel like that's always ripe for incontinuity. Because I'm always impressed watching that episode that every wine sip and pour lines up.
Yeah, I mean,
that's the job of the standby art director.
Yeah, but so drinking and smoking are bloody nightmares. They can be, you know, because the thing is, and it depends on your cutting style of, you know, what you're trying, you know, you can impose a cutting style, or the show might have a cutting style, you know, that you develop. But, you know, if you're being perfectly observant to the continuity, the rules of continuity, then you then have to cut. You know, again, it's one of those things that you get locked into, and you have to obey these set of rules, and, you know, you're sort of handcuffed by, you know, so you can't cut them rhythmically the way that you want to necessarily, because you've got to wait, you know, for them to drag the cigarette and exhale the smoke, you know, because it won't cut with the next shot. But that's why I learned, you know, I know Jonathan mentioned Brass Eye, you know, and Chris was such a genius, and he was the one who sort of introduced me to this idea of, you know, jump cutting, and so ever since then I've always had it in my, you know, my bag of tools to sort of, and I like that, because, you know, sometimes you can use it for comic effect, but also rhythmically it can really get you out of quite a few, you know, situations where, you know, you break, and even in a film where you can use it stylistically if it's done in the right way, but it can get you out of quite a few situations where you want to get things moving again, you know.
Continuity is a real sticking point for art department, because if you imagine there's, you know, 6-8 people eating dinner at a dinner table, you've got to have repeats of all of their food. So, you know, if it's a long scene and they're eating 2 or 3 mouthfuls, at the end of that you have to reset everything to how it was. So you have to then bring in a new plate with the same food on it, and keeping an eye on all of that is really tricky. And that's, you know, the standby art director is basically the production designer's eyes on camera, and it's kind of their job to spot all of that. And actually, there's a little trade secret I can let you into, which is with people drinking, what they do is they take a UV pen and fill up to however much liquid. They get a UV pen, they do a little line where the liquid starts or finishes, and you can't see that to the eye, but then when you shine a UV light on it, you can see where it is. So when you come to reset it, you know exactly what level it was at.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool. Well, Jennifer had a question kind of along the same lines. If you want to ask that in the chat.
I will let you.
All right. So she asked,
I yield time.
was there anything that you found surprising, Gary, when you went through footage? Like any fun, little, unexpected thing that you wanted to make sure you included, or you decided not to, but it was fun to come across?
Well, that's got me thinking. Hang on. I don't think so. I mean, one of the things when they got the scenes in the psychiatrist's room, I mean, Fiona was doing some stuff that, you know, that was unscripted but just characterful. I mean, yeah, and that, I mean, from Killing Eve, I became mesmerised with her. I think she's an extraordinary actress, and she does things in a deadpan way that no one else can do. I think she can do so much with her face, and it doesn't move. It's just amazing. And she does something with her eyes or her eyebrows, and I think she's just a phenomenal actor. And she was doing so much without doing much. But I don't think there was anything, I can't think of anything off the top of my head that was a big surprise that, you know, that oh, what's going on there? I can't think anyway, not right.
No, I can't think of anything.
Yeah.
Geraldine has finally joined the chat.
Jennifer, was there anything that you felt was a surprise when you watched the show?
No, it's just that you were the one that got to see all the footage that we didn't get to see. So I just didn't know if there was anything that you didn't feel was appropriate to be included that you thought was great, you know, something like that that was surprising, but it's not appropriate or something like that.
No, I mean, I think I think I could be quite difficult in the edit. If there's, you know, we talked about passion before, and it can often be misinterpreted as what the word is, but as feisty, I suppose. And, you know, sometimes I will go into bat for a certain scene or a way or a certain cut of a scene or a certain sequence that I think is really important. If the director has decided that they don't want it that version, or they don't, you know, but it's all born out of a commitment to that particular moment. But yeah, I mean, and the thing is, you know, Phoebe and Harry were so collaborative in, you know, if they felt that I was, you know, trying to keep something, or I mean, often it's trying to get rid of something, they would always listen and try things out. So but no, I can't think. There was nothing that got dropped that I thought, oh, that's a real shame. That should have gone in.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your feistiness then.
Yeah, I'm not sure the people I work with do, but you'll have to ask them that.
When you're watching the footage for the first time, do you actually laugh out loud? Because I know some people have said, like,
oh yeah,
comedy for too long, nobody ever laughs. They just go, "That's funny." Like, that's their response.
No, certain things, no. You gotta, no, I do laugh. I mean, not out loud on my own very often, but, you know, often it's that thing where, you know, I'm laughing inside or I'm smiling inside, and but this, again, if you find something funny, you got to laugh, haven't you? I mean, often you're just smiling,
right,
a bit more, it's like, imagine like those row of emojis, you can start off as, depending on what the reaction is, but I don't know, every now and again, I mean, the thing is that when I read a script, I laugh out loud if it's a funny, good script, and I think if you don't laugh out loud at a script that is supposed to be funny, then
problem.
it might mean that it's either not funny or you don't find it funny, so I think that's all part of that process of whether you are keen to do a project or not, because if you're not laughing, then something's quite wrong, because it's either not very funny or you don't find it funny. So
well, for both of you, do you remember a scene that the first time you read it in the script for the first time, you really laughed and you were just like, wow, this show's going to be phenomenal?
I think it was the stuff that didn't make you laugh that made you think the show was going to be phenomenal, if I'm honest. But I think the one scene that I remember reading and thinking that is going to be hysterical was Olivia getting annoyed when the priest says he can't do the wedding. And even on paper, you could just imagine her delivering that line.
But I do remember, I think it was episode 5. But what's the retreat episode in season 1? I think it's.
Oh yes, yeah, the silent retreat. Yes, I've been stung by a wasp. That was my favourite.
Yeah, but the moment I remember from that is that she's sitting with the bank manager on a log, and they're talking, and there was a line about, because all he wanted to do was to go and back to his wife and load the dishwasher. And I remember looking at her thinking, God, how do you get in, that, because he's sort of my age, and that's the sort of, I just was so astounded by such a very simple thought being so pertinent. And I remember thinking, that's such brilliant writing, because she's got inside the head of someone who's a different gender and a different age group, and she's absolutely hit it bang on, and it was done in a way that's really, it's such a small, simple thing that said so much. And I thought, what a really clever piece of writing that was. I mean, it wasn't funny, but I did think that really sort of took me by surprise. I didn't see that coming.
Yeah, I agree. That whole episode for me was a turning point. I mean, the first 3 were strong, but that one was like, this is unique.
And Gary, we're also wondering.
We forgot to ask you this last time.
Yeah, Chrissy just reminded me. I'm so glad. So there are some music differences between the US version and the UK version. And like in the US version, they don't use Jenny from the Block, that kind of thing. So we were curious what that experience was like for you, having to cut using 2 songs, and can you give us just like some context about those?
Was that your choice?
Yeah.
No, that will just be international clearance. So for the BBC, they've got like a blanket agreement with the music publishing rights, and so which is UK based. So often a lot of shows, if you can use pretty much what you like for UK transmission, but as soon as that show then gets sold around the world to different territories, they then have to do different versions. So they can't, otherwise the cost would be so extortionate they couldn't afford to use that music cue, or for example, or that piece of archive footage in other territories. So then they have to replace it with something that is clearable and affordable.
And does somebody else do that dub later? That's not you.
Yeah, that I mean, that will be done. So once you've done the sort of terrestrial version of the show, they then, if they've sold it worldwide, then they'll have to do an international version. And if they haven't, they'll probably do an international version anyway. Or if they then sold it subsequently, they'd have to go back into the dub and do an international version with different music.
Okay. Because what made me think of it is that the music's different in that scene with Bank Manager.
Yeah.
It's a different instrumental. And then in episode 1 of season 2, it's Strangers in the Night is what's in the script, and I guess in the UK version. And it's just some generic kind of similar loungy song.
Right, yeah.
And then, and then J-Lo they swapped out for another, again, like generic song nobody's heard of.
It's just a budgetary thing.
Yeah.
I mean, music clearance. Music it's really, it's a tricky thing to get right, and it's a very expensive business to be in. I mean, if you know, in order to get a cue cleared internationally, it really sort of racks up, you know.
Yeah, it's an expensive business.
It is.
Sounds like.
Geraldine joined. Where is she?
Hi, I'm here. Hello,
Hi,
everybody.
Hello.
Hi, Gary. Hi, Jonathan.
You had two
Hiya.
questions.
I did 2 questions.
Taking
The
up a
first
lot
one,
of
very
time.
greedy. The first one was Andrew's mentioned in some of his talks about your use, Gary, of space and time, and allowing the actors to have a bit of space between, rather than cutting too quickly, and that it really built tension, especially in the scene between Fleabag and the priest in the vestry. Is that something that's learnt, or is it instinct? How did you, I suppose, the confidence and belief to give a bit of time?
It's a good question, because it's quite a scary thing to do, to let nothing happen. And I'm doing a film at the moment, actually, and it's been great, because I think I've done a lot of shows in the last, say, 15 years. I'm thinking of shows like The Thick of It and Veep, where dialogue is cut so tightly and there's no air at all. And it's great when energy and rhythm and pace is right up there, because you're going through at such a breakneck speed. But then what you don't get to do is exactly what you just highlighted, which is for certain moments you want a reaction where nothing happens. But it's almost like a counterintuitive thing, especially having got used to cutting very quickly. But for them to sort of create space where nothing happens and you're reliant on something else. I mean, music can really help in those moments, but those scenes, that scene in particular, it took a long time to get right. Because there's a lot going on. I mean, it was brilliantly written and brilliantly performed, but it's all, for the first half of that, it's all on Fleabag. And it's such a confined space. It's not like you can sort of cut around or go to the other person. I think once or twice I went to the grill, to get round performances, but that was really restrictive. And so, but then you just thought, this is such a momentous moment that it kind of was leaping out at you to say, give them some space and time. And so a lot of that is just sort of trying things out, really, and nudging it a bit and opening it out, and then and just experimenting.
Brilliant, thank you. And the second question was, I suppose, who inspires you in terms of your job? Who inspired you? Who are your heroes?
Someone else asked me this one, so I didn't really have an answer. But I mean, there's some amazing editors out there. There's a guy, Walter Murch, who's cut virtually every amazing film in the last 50 years. He's extraordinary. But I haven't really got, it's not. I'm not really like that. I haven't got sort of you know, I'm not a massive fan of any one particular editor, but, you know, to be honest, but you can just appreciate, you know, there's certain editors out there that do like action stuff that I just think are, you know, they do such a brilliant job. But that's a sort of a different skill set. But that, you know, they've honed that to such an art form that they're, you know, some of them are brilliant at it. And I think it's like anything. I think directors and producers, they want, you know, they like to pigeonhole everybody, you know. So, oh, so and so is an action one, or so and so is a comedy one, you know. And for years, I was lucky. I had such a good, you know, I've been cutting comedy and really good comedy for about 20 years. And whilst that's been fantastic, and I've loved every moment of it, it has been a hindrance, because up until Phoebe and Harry insisted that I did Killing Eve, even on that job, they were a bit sort of unsure as to whether I could do it or not. And, you know, it's really frustrating because, and pretty insulting, because it's like, I know for a fact it's much more difficult to cut comedy than it is to cut drama. You know, because in a comedy, you've got to hit all the story beats. You have to, you know, you've got to trace a character's development. There's, you know, the storytelling arc is exactly, you've got to get all of that right, as you have in a drama. But, you know, you've got to make it funny. You've got to make sure that the jokes land, you know, and you've got to do that at the same time, you know, and you can't have lingering looks with, you know, dramatic music and no dialogue to basically help you tell the story that, okay, you can cry at this bit, or you've got to feel a bit sad at this bit, you know. That's quite easy to do, you know, because if you've got the right music's so powerful, you know, it's an amazing tool, and you can, you know, manipulate the audience really easily with it. But, you know, you can screw up a funny scene really easily. I've seen it. I've gone in and done too many jobs where I've taken over an edit, and, you know, it was all there. It just was put together in the wrong way, you know.
So is it a bit of busman's holiday when you're watching telly and films? It's are you quite critical?
It's not really, because you don't watch it with an editor's head on. I mean, you just, you know, you're on the couch having a glass of wine or a beer and watching it like anybody else, you know. Hopefully, if you get into it, I mean, every now and again I might pop out and go, oh, okay, that's, I mean, my son, he's 16 and he's getting into sort of his music and his film studies and stuff. And so we'll talk about film styles sometimes, but, you know, I can do that remotely. I don't do it whilst we're watching. I think, you know, the whole point of a show that grips you is that you just get immersed in the narrative, and you shouldn't really be watching it with a work head on anyway.
I'm just impressed your 16-year-old child actually wants to listen to you as a parent.
He doesn't. He thinks I'm an idiot. So, I am.
Oh.
Thank you very much.
Well, Maria had a question, and she asked that we ask for her. So she wanted to know, Gary, more about how you got started in editing and production, and also, you know, what would you suggest for someone who wants to learn more about post-production and editing world industry?
Yeah, I mean, it's changed so much since I started. I mean, I really struggled. I came out of university, you know, I'd made films and was going to be a hotshot director, and it took me about a year to get a runner's job making cups of tea. And I kept knocking on the door, and I didn't know anybody. And I think I was selling corporate hospitality at the time, and I thought, I've got to do it. I hated doing this job, and I managed to get a runner's job, and then I did that for about a year.
If somebody had told you then you were going to win an Emmy, you wouldn't have believed it, would you?
No way. And then I got a job as another runner, but on a show, and then it was a show called The Word, which is a British entertainment show. It was sort of big in its day, and it was great because it was basically staffed by lots of young people who didn't know what they were doing. And I was a runner for the first series, and then I said, oh yeah, I'm an editor really. And then they said, all right, then we'll give you a test. They gave me a month's trial, and I somehow blagged it. This is before computers. This is on tape to tape. And then I blagged it, and I've been getting away with it ever since. So, you know, I had a lucky break in that sense. But, you know, it's a really old-fashioned industry. But I think if you wanted to, you know, get into editing now, it's much more. I think it's more formalised because, since everything went tapeless, you know, the role of the assistant editor has become, you know, really important, like it was back in the days of film. And so editors really rely heavily on an assistant editor. And so if you wanted to go down that route, you know, you should try and learn, you know, how you process. It's all about file management and, you know, syncing up rushes digitally. And so you have to learn how to do all of that, really. But I think also the one thing that hasn't changed, and in fact it's probably got a lot easier now with it, you know, with phones and stuff. You can go and shoot a film on that, and, you know, there's lots of free software that you could download, and, you know, you've got access to a laptop or a computer. You can go out and film something and then edit it together, and, you know, there's all sorts of stuff that you can grab off the internet and, you know, mix stuff from you. Well, it's a bit more difficult to do that, but if you can get footage from wherever and just play around with ideas, I think that's how I learn. And I think I say to all my assistants, if I'm working with them on a project, you know, I want them to come to me and go, you know, what, you know, I've done all my jobs for today. What, you know, is there something I can, you know, cut together? And I always say, yeah, take that scene, you know, have a run at it and see what you think. And I always say to them, I'm gonna have to watch all the rushes myself and do my own version, but I'll do that. You do your version, and then we'll watch them. And hopefully theirs isn't better than mine. You know, I like to give them, you know, because that's, if someone had said that to me 25 years ago, I'd have gone, oh wow, that's amazing, yes please. Yeah. You know, and so you try and you put yourself back in that situation, and, you know, I think you just got to cut, and, you know, because it's only by doing it that you realise, oh, that doesn't work, or that does work. More often it's that doesn't work, and so you learn by your mistakes like that, really. But I think it's still quite hard to sort of get in if you don't know anyone. Yeah, I think
very hard. Yeah,
it's really difficult. I think
it is. I mean, it was hard back in our day as well, if I remember. But I feel like it wasn't. I mean, it's weird because when I kind of got into the industry, it was just as the unions were kind of breaking up, and prior to that, you really wouldn't have got into the industry unless you knew somebody, and so that kind of opened it up to a lot of people back then, and it was a lot less structured. But I think now there isn't that same kind of unionization that there used to be back then, but there's kind of like a course for almost every aspect of film and TV now, isn't there, that you could do, and a lot of people come through those routes. I mean, nowadays there's a production design degree course that you can do in a number of places, and so a lot of people come in through that. In fact, I always try and get some of those graduates onto a job just to, you know, give people a start, because it's so hard to get in. But having said that, if you haven't come from that route, it's even harder. So, you know, I feel back in our day, it was possibly easier. There's a lot more people kind of wanting to get into the business nowadays, I think.
What you guys are, sorry, Gary.
I was going to say, I think it feels like there's more work, but I don't know if that's true or not.
Well, it definitely was until March,
Well, and is what you guys are describing specific to the UK in terms of the unionization?
Yes, for definite. Yes, it's very different in the US.
Well, there's great unions in the US. I mean, you know, the guilds are amazing. They're, you know, really protective of their members, and
they are. It's something that I feel we're lacking here. Yeah.
I mean, ever since I joined ACE, I mean, you know, not only the people I've met have been fantastic, and the friends I've made have been really great, but, you know, that sense of camaraderie, and what I've appreciated more than anything else is the appreciation of the craft of editing is really, really highly regarded in the States. Whereas over here, no, I don't know, most people don't know what we do.
I think that's the same with a lot of disciplines in America, because having experienced being a member of the Art Directors Guild, same kind of thing really, and also being lucky enough to have worked in America on occasion. As a head of department, you're really highly regarded, whereas in the UK, you know, you're just another crew member, and it's a very different structure. You know, I mean, obviously being head of department, you carry a bit more weight than if you're not, but you seem to have a lot more kind of respect, I think, in American productions than you do in the UK.
I agree.
I feel like fans are getting more access to that content too, because like I feel like there's so much behind the scenes content, and I think as you get into a fandom, you dig deeper. But it seems like people have more of an appreciation for the off camera stuff as much as the on.
Yeah, I mean that's what's so fantastic about social media and YouTube. I mean, if you wanted, you could, I think, relatively easily shoot something, edit something, and then stick it out there and see what happens. I mean, lots of people have got a big following by mucking about with archive footage, news footage, and then shooting some other stuff as if they're there's lots of comic people that are being quite clever with the way they manipulate stuff. They're all doing it for free and putting it out there for free, but that's fine if it's just another way in. It's, if you can get some recognition from it, I think that what's great about that is you're showing that you've got creativity in terms of editing, and that's the big thing, because you have a computer and you're pressing buttons, but that's not what the art form, that's not the craft. The craft is knowing what pictures go against other pictures, and it's manipulating pictures and sounds. That's essentially what it is. And whether you just happen to be doing it through a computer, but that's not the craft. Is knowing what works and what doesn't work, and it's by doing things and mucking about and experimenting that you learn, I think.
Yeah, I think I've heard some people say that even the accessibility is so good, even though it also means there are exponentially more people vying for the same thing.
Yeah,
but it seems like there are also a lot more opportunities now with so many different.
I think there is. Yeah. I feel like whenever I talk to students at various courses, sometimes I do some kind of visiting lecturing and things like that to various universities and colleges, and I always say to them, now is an absolutely perfect time to be getting into the business, because there is so much work around. You almost can't fail to be hired. But that hasn't always been the case. You go back maybe 5 years and there would be way more people entering the industry than there were jobs. But I think, we were going through a boom until coronavirus hit, and no reason why it shouldn't come back. But there's a lot of content providers now, and so there needs to be a lot of content. So it does seem to be a very buoyant industry, which is, it's fantastic, really.
Just drafting off a question Anna just posted, have you guys noticed a definite shift post Fleabag? And for you, Gary, post Emmy?
As far as the jobs you're getting.
The jobs you're getting, the types of work you're being offered.
I think so. Go on, you go first, Gary.
Well, I was going to say that the Emmy, I hadn't realised what a huge thing it was, and it's actually the people in America who have made it really clear. I mean, how significant. I mean, the whole success of Fleabag at the Emmys was, extraordinary. But when you got one of those in your hand, that I think that's been a bit of a game changer, really, because it just means that you can. It's just that recognition, all of a sudden, okay, you got a paid up membership at that club, so you must know what you're doing. And being lucky enough to work on a show that did have a big impact, those two things have been great. It just means that, if a project comes up, you have got more of a fighting chance to be seen for it.
That's good to hear, because I often heard that there's kind of like a bit of a curse with winning a BAFTA or an Oscar, and if you win an award, people feel that you're out of their league, so they don't bother asking you.
Well, I think I've had that sounding like a bit of an idiot. That you know, that a lot of people who I've known for a long time, I'm talking about people I've worked with for 10, 15 years, they go, "Oh, we don't bother ringing you anymore, Gary, because you're always busy." And I say, "Look,
Or too expensive." Yeah,
but,
I get that as well. People say to me, "Oh, you're always so busy," and I think, well, how do you know? Phone me up and ask.
Well, I mean, maybe they phone your agent or whatever, but it is. I always say, always ring. You never know, because also,
of course, you never know.
When you're in between sort of maybe bigger jobs and there's a lull, you're happy to go back and do a job that will just fit in. So you never really know. And
also, sometimes you want to work with people that you really like as well.
Well, not of course, yeah. And if there's certain people I'd walk over hot coals and hang out in an edit suite for.
Yeah.
Not literally, but if you could, because you're going to have a real hoot. It might just be for 2 or 3 weeks, do like a pilot. But what a great way to spend 3 weeks with someone. One of your best mates. You're going to go in, you're going to be laughing every day, and you have lunch together and talk all day long. Don't get any work done.
Yeah,
it's great.
And you never know, you might have the next Fleabag on your hands.
Well, I mean, that's the other thing is, you when we started on that show, I mean, people have asked before, "Oh, did you know it was going to?" No idea whatsoever.
No, you never know. But the scripts were incredible. I mean, you always knew it was something really special, but you just don't know how the audience is going to take to that.
The idea of taking a good script and then fast forwarding to what actually happened. I mean, I've done some big shows in my time, but I had never ever had a show that had landed as spectacularly as Fleabag.
Yeah, it's one of those once in a lifetime jobs, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've done shows that have been talked about a lot, but not like this.
No. But particularly in America, I think it was huge over there.
This is so fantastic to do this tonight, but it's so interesting to see, how well as a show it has landed, because I think everyone who worked on it felt like it was quite quintessentially sort of British, so for it to translate as successfully as it has done is it's really great. It's fantastic.
I have 2 Emmy related questions for Gary. One is, how did you physically get it home?
That's a good question.
In a box.
You shipped it?
No, it's no, I took it on. I wouldn't leave my side, I tell you.
I was gonna say, it must be in hand
luggage. A little seatbelt.
They give me this lovely box. It fits in. It's like all properly made. So
oh wow,
it fits in there lovely, and then flips down. You've got a little catch, and then that's what I love about Americans. Honestly, there's something so fantastic. Like if you did any of this in England, you just get they clonk you on the head with the bloody thing. But like you go in there, like and we're also sort of embarrassed by it, And then if you what have you got in there, sir? As they're going through security, and it's an award. Oh, what is it? And then it's an Emmy, and it's like, oh my God, get the thing, and you got to get it out and show everyone and have a selfie, and then it's like whoa, and they're all going mad, and it's like, whoa, this is really cool, and of course everyone else is looking, and then the more people looking, the more embarrassed you're getting. It's like, oh no, is this really happening? But no, it's. And then when I got on the plane, one of the very nice people put it in another there. She give it to me, and she put it in the cupboard. I said, look after it.
I think LAX, every 5th person has one.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, got another one.
But no, I was also going to ask, since you had worked on Veep, I feel like when Phoebe beat Julie Dreyfus for that for Best Actress, that was a huge moment.
Mm.
And really, I felt once that happened, I was like, oh, it's going to win the rest of the night. But what was your reaction seeing that moment? I guess for Jonathan too.
Well, I thought, I mean, I suppose because I had a foot in each camp, really. I mean, I thought, I didn't think she picked Julia to the that award, because there's a few things. Obviously, Julia had gone through, you know, a terribly personal, you know, tough time, and it was the last Veep, so it just had it was all teed up for her to win it.
She was going to break a record too, I think.
Yeah.
Probably, you know, and so, you know, as they say, the script was already written, right? And so, you know, for her not to get it was a big thing. But and I just thought that was really great, because I thought Phoebe deserved it.
Yeah,
I hadn't really followed that last season, but you know, Julie's got enough.
You still have other chances.
yeah, exactly.
There was a question. Let's see. I don't think Laura ever joined that I saw. Because she had a good question for both of you of like, what are shows that you think excel at what you do? So like Gary for editing, or for production design, Jonathan, or even just shows you like watching.
Should I go?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, I'm thinking.
Well, the best show on TV, hands down, is Succession. In my humble opinion, I think it's just extraordinary. But it also helps that I know quite a lot of the guys who were writing and directing on it. But I just think it's brilliant. I think it's so good. And I'm so glad for Jesse, because he's such a good writer. But I just, you know, that's one of those shows I put on and I just can't get enough of it. I just think it's genius. And that does drama and comedy perfectly for me. So I think that's a brilliant show. I've enjoyed watching Ozark.
I love that. Yeah.
And beautiful looking as well.
Yeah.
They film it in Atlanta. We're always obligated to say anytime someone mentions.
That was going to be one of my shows to talk about, just to say that, you know, it's shot beautifully and production design is great. I mean, I think the key with production design, and there's a lot of great shows with production design, is that you don't notice the production design. You know, you want it to be believable, and you want it to be part of the show. You want it to be its own character, and you want it to fit in with everything that's going on. I think something like Ozark is perfect in that respect. You just, you know, it's a totally believable world. So things like that I really like. And then obviously there's the other end of that, where you've got things like Game of Thrones, which is obviously a completely made up environment. So, you know, and everything in between.
It's made up.
Don't spoil it for everyone.
It was a documentary.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I'm not sure I could single anyone out. There's a lot of great production design. I think that it's really, the whole area of production design has really upped its game in the last 10 years, really. You know, TV shows are now kind of competing with feature films on that.
Yeah. Jonathan, have you worked in like virtual set design or?
No.
That
I remember back in the early 90s, and virtual reality studios were kind of just invented, and everyone was saying, oh, that's the end of set design, it's all going to be virtual reality, and people were thinking about how they could, you know, work in virtual reality environments, and it never really took off. And obviously it's still a big deal in high-end feature films, but in TV it's not really a thing. So, which I'm quite pleased about, because, you know, I love more than anything to see the craft of designing and making things, rather than doing them on a computer.
Because I remember seeing for the Oscars this year, someone did a really good reel about all the nominees kind of had something unique about their visual effects. And The Lion King, I guess, because they said a lot of times all those virtual designs they're great. They're designed by illustrators, but not by cinematographers or production designers. So they found a way to actually like move a camera through it and make it look more real. But you're right, that's feature film. It's probably too expensive for TV.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's see, any other?
There's another doggy.
Another what?
There's another doggy.
Oh.
Where?
There's dog.
Oops. Anything else I'm missing? Did I miss anything, Allie?
Oh, well, we did.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, there was the question about the dinosaur and the picture in Godmother's kitchen, wasn't there?
Exactly. Yeah, so we've noticed one, is that a picture of a topless godmother?
It is. I mean, it's not actually Olivia, but we wanted to have lots of awkward photos around that she would have thought was very arty, but anyone else would have been quite uncomfortable seeing. And we also did that in this exhibition as well. We had a whole wall. I'm not sure whether you ever saw it, but there was a long line of nude photos that were supposedly of Godmother. And so we wanted to put one of those in the kitchen, and we dressed this kitchen the night before. It was somebody's actual house and they were living there, and we put all this stuff out, and just before we were about to leave, I thought, I can't leave these out because they've got young kids, so we had to take them down and then put them back up the next morning when we were filming. But yeah, that was a conscious effort just to put a bit of Godmother's artistic creation in the kitchen. And the dinosaur, I actually can't remember. I know for sure it wasn't the little one, what's his name, Hugh.
Harry. Yeah.
It wasn't that dinosaur because that was quite small, so I'm not sure where that other dinosaur came from, if I'm honest.
Someone said they thought it was like a chameleon.
Yeah, it looks a bit like a chameleon in the photo. I can't actually remember what that was and how that got there, but
we'll have to check your continuity. Maybe one of the children left it there from the house.
They could. Well, yeah, you never know. No, I think I'll have to ask Lucy. That'll be down to her.
Yeah.
It's funny, we had a WhatsApp group. There's like me and Harry and Phoebe and Lydia, the producer. And the WhatsApp group was called Dinos. Dinosaurs.
Cute. Very appropriate.
We'll open it up, open the floor. Anybody have anything else?
Burning questions.
I just want to know I don't know if you guys have done both film and TV, and do you have a preference if you have?
Yeah, I've done both. In fact, I'm editing a movie at the moment for Disney. I think that for me, it's about the project and the script really. That all has to start with that. But I must admit, I'm sort of leaning more towards feature films at the moment because I just quite like the bigger canvas to sort of stretch your editing legs somewhat. And there's still, I mean, I don't know. I think really it's about the script because the one thing that I will try and always keep in mind is that however small you think the TV show is, it can just go into orbit. And so Fleabag has done more for my career than any of the films I've edited to date. So it's you just have to take the project on its own merits. Really, I think that's because you're better off doing a really great TV show that just goes out there and communicates and gets accepted by an audience. Especially now with television watching habits have completely been transformed by Netflix and all the other platforms, and shows are being binge watched. I mean, obviously under lockdown they are, but they are generally and have been for quite a few years. So the way that audiences engage with TV is so much more different. Yeah, I just think it's nice to do a bit of both, really.
Yeah. I haven't done a feature film. I've only ever done TV, but I wouldn't say no if somebody offered me one.
Gary will put in a good word for you, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. I just need friends in high places.
Well, he's at Disney. How much higher can you get?
Yeah, exactly. By the time it gets to Gary, it's the production's finished for people like me. So I don't think Gary's going to be much help for me, sadly.
Gary, you know who should have done this? Do you guys had talked about liking working with, you worked with Harry and Phoebe previously, and that everybody on Fleabag seemed to just like Phoebe said, it was sickening how much everybody loved each other. Have you all talked about working together again, or do you have any projects that have been floated?
Not that I know of. I mean, it's really hard to work with the same people because people go off and do all sorts of things, and it's really unlikely that your dates will overlap. And you generally don't even speak to people between one job and another, or very rarely, to try and coordinate. And from that point of view, it's quite difficult because you'll get chosen to be on a project by a producer or a director. So I wouldn't be able to choose to work with costume designer or makeup or location manager or first assistant director. They would all be taken on independently. So the chances of you being with the same group of people is quite remote, unless there was another Phoebe/Harry project where they may try and bring back all of the Fleabag crew. So sometimes you get lucky, and you work with good people, throughout different projects. But it's really, it's part of the nice thing about the job is that every job is different, and the whole crew, it's always a new crew, and you make new friends and colleagues and meet new people, and that's part of the beauty of it.
I basically won't take another job until I ring Phoebe and say, what are you doing?
That sounds like a good strategy.
Yeah. Any plan? Okay, I'll take this job then.
Hopefully she'll do something soon.
Yeah.
Is there any particular talent or anybody that you would love to work with?
That's
from Natasha.
Well, yeah, there's loads of people out there.
There's so many great talented
Who do you
people.
not want to work with?
Oh, that's a much easier answer.
I'm not going to tell you that.
Yeah. No, and you only know once you've worked with them. I've always wanted to work with Ricky Gervais because I think he's hysterical.
I have worked with Ricky Gervais. He is funny.
Yeah, I bet.
In fact, I did his film with him a few years ago, Life on the Road, and it was great. It was really a lot of fun. And he asked me to do Afterlife, and I said no.
Oh,
Gary. But it's great because my assistant, Jo, who'd been with me for quite a long time, she worked with me on The Thick of It and Veep, and I kept saying, right, you're ready now, Jo, come on, get out there, and pushing her out the nest kind of thing. She said, but I like working with you, and I like working with all the good projects we're doing. And I said, I know, but you're assisting, you're not editing, right? And so it's great because she's cut both seasons of Afterlife.
Brilliant.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm being selfish. Have either of you worked with Matt Berry?
No.
I have.
Okay.
What have we done with now? I'm trying to think whether he was in. I did a series a few years ago called The Mighty Boosh, but don't think he was in it.
I've got a feeling
he was.
Yeah.
He was. We just rewatched it.
He was in the first series.
Sorry.
Was he in the first series?
I think so.
Oh, I'm not sure.
I think he's like the owner of the zoo. Anyway, now I'm on a tangent. But no, just my current obsession is What We Do in the Shadows.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah, but he is so good in whatever he does. He's just, I don't know how he gets away with it because he's so over the top. and he does such stupid bloody voices, but he has just got funny bones, and so
Yeah. I
whatever
was just
he
going to say
does,
that some people they've just got
yeah,
funny bones.
you know, very few people can get away with big performances in comedy, and he's one of them.
Mm.
I tell you who's Brett's another one. He some of his performances were so over the top, but he's so good. He can contain that largeness, and a lot of actors who do comedy think the bigger they go, the funnier they are, and it's the opposite.
You're talking about Brett?
Hmm?
You're talking about Brett?
No, I'm talking about when people play comedy, they try and go quite big because they think, I do a big funny voice and I'm, and their performance is big, they think it's funnier, and actually the opposite is the case. Like smaller performances, I always gravitate to, because I think they're more real, and therefore they're, comedy's got to be real. And but Matt and Brett, they both are inherently funny, so they can get away with giving a bigger performance and still containing it somehow. And I don't know how they do it, but they're brilliant at it.
To try to bring it back to Fleabag, you're talking about taking specific cuts of lines. We've all talked about how there are lines that we now say, just if it comes up in conversation, we say it to Fleabag.
You get a little glimpse into my life. So I've had 25 years of all that stuff going on there. And if someone says something, like if anyone says, it's a chicken and egg situation, I go, what come first? Because it's a line from Alan Partridge, and it's like it's a Pavlovian response now. It's broke. If anyone says it, I have to say it.
Yeah.
They look at it.
Go ahead.
No, you can't then then you have to try and explain why you just said what you just said, and it's not funny.
Exactly. We even say sometimes it's like we know a language.
Yeah.
So
what are the lines that you repeat?
If you're asking something that you're inquiring about, you say, "I want to know," because that's how the priest says it. Because I want to know. And then somebody else was saying that they were talking to somebody, and someone mentioned Japan, and in her head she went, "Japan? Oh!" Like heard the priest saying it.
Yeah.
They're mostly priest lines.
I get where you're going with this, right?
But we also like things like it's all the things from Claire about the hair. Yeah. Everything is all the things. It is all the things. So there's lots of great lines that we use, especially on the Fleabag Situation podcast. There's always come up again and again and again.
And a lot of boo.
A lot of excellent. This is an excellent.
Beautiful. Yeah, this is an excellent one.
It is.
Now we're just turning into the Chris Farley show. We're like, remember Fleabag? It was awesome.
Well.
It's nice to have little catchphrases though.
Yeah. Shows how popular it is.
Yeah.
We were saying when we can all actually travel and be in the same room together, there needs to be like a Fleabag convention. Like a Comic-Con Fleabag.
A good idea.
We're booking you both right now.
Hint, hint.
Yeah. Someday. We had actually been talking about it, of trying to figure out a meetup, and we even have a map of like where everybody is, which it's phenomenal that there's all over the world. But that's obviously been postponed.
2021 maybe.
Yeah, won't be long.
Yeah. All right.
Any other takers? Oh my gosh, it's dinner time.
It's been 2 hours.
Yeah, I know. Well, and thank you so much, both of you, for being so generous with your time and setting
not at all.
Such a treat.
No.
Thank you again, Jonathan, for doing all these.
Not at all. Yeah. Always good to do.
Yes.
And thank you, Gary. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Gary.
Seeing as you're one of the only people working in the industry at the moment.
Yeah. We know you're busy, so we really appreciate it.
No worries, it's been fun. We enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good.
And thanks, Jonathan, and we look forward to the next one.
Oh yeah, I've got to plan who that'll be now.
No pressure.
No, exactly. Oh,
I was joking.
Thanks, Christy and Ali, as well. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. You guys.
Thank you. Bye.
See you all soon.
Stay well.
Bye.